What does this stone statue head, the statue of Vulcan, and a small town called Frog Level have to do with cemeteries? Check out today's video and learn something.
There are cemeteries all across this area. Some are lost, some are not so lost. There are the graves of the famous and the not so famous, and the downright interesting. My name is Edward Wolfgang Poe, and my job is to find these cemeteries and bring them to you on Cemetery Saturday.
1821, the American Asylum for the Deaf and the Dumb is granted a parcel of land by the federal government in Middle Alabama in an area that was known as Frog Level. Mr. William Ely, who was their land agent and attorney, sold off this property so that it could be the money could be used for the asylum to expand its operations in Connecticut. And among the various things he did, he donated a parcel of land to that little community for a courthouse, and he specified, "I will donate this to you on the condition you name the town after me." And that is where the town of Elyton got its name, and that is the town that is actually older than the city of Birmingham and is now a neighborhood out on the west side. Among the plots that he sold a 40-acre plot to a land speculator, Mr. William Dupuy, who actually established a cemetery on one little corner of his land that actually already had a few graves on it, and that is now known as the Elyton Cemetery. The Elyton Cemetery was officially founded in 1834, and the oldest marked grave is Miss Nancy Scott, and she was buried that same year. And this is where most of the very early pioneers of this part of Jones Valley are buried. And unfortunately, even as early as 1891, the cemetery had fallen into disrepair, and there were efforts to raise funds and clean it up, etc. And there's a newspaper article that mentions that they raised $450 for the repair and maintenance of the cemetery. I mentioned that the cemetery already existed when Colonel Dupuy bought the property, and the oldest known grave that is recorded is an infant son in 1805. So that is really one of the oldest graves within the whole county. Unfortunately, it's unmarked, and we do not know where this infant child is. And this brings us to this brick courtyard. You notice there's a plinth in the middle of it, and the reason why that is there is because there used to be a statue called the Laughing Girl, and that statue is where our marble head comes into the story. As late as the 1970s, the statue was there, and this whole area of the cemetery was actually being used as a playground for children because it had fallen into neglect and nobody really cared about a West Side cemetery, even though it did contain the graves of so many of our early pioneer citizens. The statue was actually being very abused. It was used as home plate for the baseball ground that was being played in the middle of a cemetery. And it was noted that even then the statue was falling into disrepair. One of its arms was missing. There was chewing gum on its forehead, etc. Then there was a young man who was riding his bicycle through the cemetery in the late 70s, and the statue had been just smashed, and he, among the pieces, found this marble head, and he took it home to keep it. Now we bring our story up to the 21st century, when the gentleman who was the child on the bike walks into the Birmingham History Center with a velvet bag and a head inside. The head was the head of the statue, and he wanted to know if what he suspected, that the statue had actually been carved by Giuseppe Moretti, who was the man who created Vulcan. There has been back and forth speculation on whether or not the statue was actually created by Mr. Moretti. The consensus is it might be, but most likely it's not, because there are no records of the statue being carved. His secretary kept fairly meticulous details and photographs of him working. His own notes do not record a statue that might be the Laughing Girl. And unfortunately, it's probably going to be one of those mysteries that will be forever lost. Just like a cemetery that's in the middle of town and is obvious, but no one knows about it or goes there. The statue's plinth and the brick courtyard are still there, along with the benches, although they're damaged. And there are many, many damaged graves. The property is mowed. It is maintained by the city, but they do not use funds to actually repair, set the monuments back up, etc., etc. The cemetery is very picturesque to walk through. There is a variety of Victorian headstones. There are stone covers for burials. There is this beautiful lightning blasted tree that is just artistic as all get out. So, have you ever visited Arlington Antebellum Home and Gardens, or even found the Elyton Cemetery and walked through and seen our pioneer ancestors? Is there another pioneer grave that you know about? Then please plug that into the comments below. Please click the little subscribe button and the little bell. That way I know that people are actually watching these videos, and you will be notified of every single one that I actually post, whether they're actually on time or not, like today. These videos are made possible by the Birmingham Historic Touring Company and patrons like you. Patrons like Alyssa, my very first one. Hi, thank you.